Hey guys, welcome back to the IDP Plus Trends podcast here from the IDP guys. I am not able to have my co-host Gary on with me tonight, but I am welcoming an esteemed colleague from the IDP guys team, and that is Steve. He's known as from Twitter, Average Joe's Fantasy Football. Welcome, Steve. Glad to have you, man. Thanks for coming on. You want to give the audience a little bit of background about yourself?
Yeah, Steve is the name. Obviously, Average Joe's Fantasy Football. You can find me on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it nowadays, and then of course YouTube. I'm glad to be part of IDP. This is an awesome team, and I'm actually super excited. It's my first time really doing some awesome defensive content. I've been playing IDP forever, but now I get to really talk about it, so it's gonna be fun stuff.
So cool, man. For the people, our viewers and listeners, what information can they learn from you? Put yourself on the map for them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I specialize in the offensive side, redraft, dynasty, anything like that. Recently been really talking about defensive side. Obviously, this is a niche that a lot more people are starting to get after. I've been doing IDP leagues well over 12 years now. So I've been doing it for a long time, just never really deep dived into it until recently. And it's been exciting to kind of see how everyone kind of rates and ranks and all these players and where they stand. And what obviously is king. Everyone knows what is king in offense, right? You've got obviously quarterbacks with super flex. You got running backs who, top 2 or 3 who dominate every single season. And of course, wide receivers are the name of the game when it comes to PPR. But defense has been all about tackling. And of course, getting those sacks and defensive tackles. And this is a lot of fun. I'm just super excited because, again, for me, being able to talk defense, where I'm an offensive guy, I love giving these guys some attention that they don't always get talked about. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
For sure, man. And like you said, it's not a hot commodity yet. It's growing IDP, but it still needs to be put on the map there, and I'm glad to have you tonight help me do that. And that's what I wanted to say is, I mean, we're at a wild time. It's February. We're talking about where free agents may land. We're using the information we have today, and this might change tomorrow, but hopefully if you're seeing this right now, you can use this information to get up ahead of your opponents. We are going to be talking about dynasty here, but even if you're doing redraft, this information is very pertinent to your league, especially based on your scoring. So keep in mind with what we'll say as we go on about scoring and different tactics, different ways to view these guys we're going to talk about today. But thank you so much for coming on and giving yourself a little intro there. If you haven't followed Average Joe yet, Average Joe's Fantasy Football, where can people find you? Is it at Average Joe's Fantasy Football like you have right there?
Yeah, so obviously here's my X handle. You can obviously follow me there. I've got Instagram as well, TikTok, and then of course Average Joe's Fantasy Football on YouTube as well, which is where most of my videos are. Twitter is definitely where I give those quick, snips, talk about some rankings real quick, talk about some players, and of course how I feel in the moment when I'm either enjoying the game or of course talking fantasy news or NFL news in general. So of course make sure you follow me there as well.
Awesome. Thanks, man. And if you haven't followed me, you can see my name at the bottom of the screen at Johnny Freaking F1. For those of you who are not viewing, just listening, we are going to dive into our defensive back tiers. We have 2 tiers coming. The first one is going to be the first 6, who we say the cream of the crop in defensive backs. But before we do that, I don't want to jump the gun just yet. I want to mention to all those fantasy commissioners, all those fantasy players, if your league does not have a trophy yet, or if you won the league and you're looking how to spend your winnings, go to trophysmack.com. Check out their selection on trophies. They even have belts like WWE belts. You could be walking out of there looking like Triple H, man. So they have really cool swag over there. And as a matter of fact, if you use the promo code IDP guys, you get a free ring with a purchase of a trophy or a belt. So once again, use the promo code IDP guys for that free ring with your purchase of a belt or a trophy. Right now, we're going to get into it, man. We're going to give these guys, these listeners, our tier 1 defensive back rankings. We collabed on this a little bit. We talked about, tier 1 versus tier 2. We did mention it's a dynasty perspective. So with that being said, we're not going to, we do have to take age into consideration, but we're not going to just axe somebody because they're 28 or 30 years old. We're going to take it case by case, and we do have some guys that are a little older on these lists. The first one is no surprise. We're going to get right into it. It's Antoine Winfield Jr. 25 years old. This guy had a huge year. A lot of people, this was their breakout guy, and it was really nice to see him hit. He had 122 total tackles over his 4-year career. He's had 384, so almost averaging, 100 tackles a year at the defensive back position. It was really nice to see him get 6 sacks this year. And a little fun fact about that, he's the 6th safety in NFL history with 6 or more sacks in a season at the defensive back at safety position. So big year, big shout out to Antoine Winfield Jr. 15 career sacks. I mean, this guy does it all. Tackles for loss. He lines up in the box. He's good in coverage too. I mean, it's a shoe-in as far as here as number one. Do you think that Steve is the sky the limit for Antoine Winfield, or is this his ceiling this year?
I don't think he's quite hit his ceiling. I mean, I love what he has done for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm hoping he does stay with them. I think he's perfect for that defense. They absolutely want to keep him. I think that's where I think most people expect him to be. I think his tackling is always going to be where it's at, about 100, probably even to the 120 range. He's a playmaker. He can get the ball, whether it be on the ground from a fumble, interception. I love the sacks. I love that they used him in the box. I love that they were able to bring him around. I think they're actually going to use him even more. Like, I think what they saw out of him was like, man, this guy can be our all-around player. So I don't think this is quite his ceiling. I think they're going to use him. And again, I think this is going to be another great season. I think he should be an all-pro. I think he should be a Pro Bowl every year. Like, hands down, I would be shocked if Tampa does not keep him.
Yeah, I would be too, man. I agree there. I mean, you don't let a player like this walk. He's hitting from all cylinders. He's getting at the quarterback, right? He had 6 sacks this year. He's a sure tackler. He's a huge presence in that locker room. Of course, they have other guys to resign there. They got some questions on offense. I think they have Godwin. Mike Evans, who needs a contract. He's a free agent. Baker Mayfield, that's another question. I mean, Levante David, if they can entice him to come back for a year. And to speak on that too, it's like, maybe on one hand you're saying, oh, if Levante doesn't come back, maybe the tackles go up for Winfield. But at the same time, with Levante David there, 122 tackles, like that's somebody who's taking away tackles, I feel, right? So it's, hey, Levante's there and Winfield had the year he did. Might as well stay, right? If you're a fantasy manager. You really want things to stay the way they are for Antoine Winfield, and first thing he can do to help that is stay himself, right? So I don't think that they move on from him. He's a great player and probably somebody who you're banking on for the next 5 or 6 years at least, at the safety position. So sky's the limit, bright future ahead. Hopefully we get a repeat, maybe even improve on some numbers from this year. It's tough to ask, but boy, that would be nice, right?
Yeah, I love him. One of my favorite players defensively. And again, I think it's going to get even better. I don't see him declining at all.
Straight up. Now, we talked about how money in the bank he was at number 1, but at the same time, there's some good safeties we have this year, some good corners in this selection, but none like that, So when we talk about the next guy, I mean, to me, like Antoine Winfield versus the next guy on this list is going to be tier amongst itself, right? But for number 2, we've got Xavier McKinney from the Giants. They're kind of in the middle of the pack as far as cap room. I think they have $21 million available, so they can make this happen. The only problem I think for Xavier McKinney is he played so well this year that I think he's kind of put himself on the map. And for other teams too, right? I think he might get a nice contract offered, at least, whether he wants to stay there, pay homage, pay respects to the team that drafted him, maybe. But at the same time, he's had a chance to chase. I think he's going to have a chance to chase the bag here. But I mean, overall, great year for Xavier McKinney. It was nice to see him in his 4th year. We saw flashes like 2 years ago of him being a good defensive back, but man, he really came into it his own way. I mean, I think he had 4 top 10 defensive back finishes, 7 top 20 finishes, 7 weeks of top 20 finishes. What a great player. What a great stat line he had, 116 tackles. It's not somebody who's going to really make too much noise rushing the passer. He's only had 2 career quarterback hits. He did have 1.5. He does have 1.5 sacks in his career, but over 4 years, and especially when we talk about safeties, sacks, it matters. It's nice that Antoine Winfield, is their trendsetter breaking records, but at the same time, Winfield's 6 sacks. It's not a stat that you're going to sleep over when you're looking at defensive backs. You're looking at the tackles. You're looking at pass defense, tackles for loss, right? But we will mention sacks too. You'll see that throughout. But somebody who's a great tackler, kind of getting better each year. He's only 24. He's not even 25 years old. Hopefully they find a way to re-sign him. But I don't know if that's going to happen with how good he's played this year, and why he's number 2 on this list is not collectively over the 4 years. It's kind of like he was a great prospect, came out of Alabama and really had good things to say about, but saw flashes of the pan. Boom, the 4th year he put it together, and I'm willing to kind of put my name on him and say like this is number 2 in this defensive back pool, just because I see the upside with him. Do you think I'm crazy, Steve? What do you think about him?
No, I loved him in Alabama. I don't love him as a Giant player, but I think he's perfect for that defense. I do think they're going to try to go after him. They do have plenty of cap space, but they do have a lot of players to still, kind of fill out this roster, because right now, obviously, the Giants are still in that rebuild mode. But he's young. He's 24. The only thing is he did obviously come off an injured season in 2022, but he did really well last season coming off of that. So that's not overly concerning. When you see that he's missed some time, the fact that he showed up the way he did in 2023 just shows that obviously he's able to come back from a pretty good injury, pretty bad injury, and just, push right through it and act like nothing happened. So I'm excited. I do think obviously players, you got to understand, like, these players do want to win, and they also want to be able to take care of their families, right? So when you've got teams going out there throwing some money, I could see him leaving. He would be worth it. I think, again, scheme-wise, he's got to be in the right scheme, but I think he'll be worth it. I do think Giants try to keep him just because of his age, use him as part of that rebuild, right? Get this team going for the New York Giants. But like you said, I do think people are going to try to spend some money. There are a lot of teams that could use a safety, especially of his caliber, who's able to make plays. He had 3 interceptions. He's able to get, towards the line of scrimmage as well. And again, Giants were a team that struggled defensively overall. But I do think he's going to be a nice little breakout player, whether it's with the Giants or someone else. I could see him obviously leaving. I think I could see him going to, the Houston Texans. I think with D'Amico Ryans and what they're trying to do over there, I think that would be a team I wouldn't be shocked if he went there.
I could see that too, man. That'd be a nice, fruitful landing spot for him. Seems like Texans, they have, whether it's Petrie or Jonathan Owens, somebody's there to make wreak havoc in the backfield. So that's a fruitful landing spot for him. Yeah, I like McKinney a lot. I'm glad you do too. And if he stays, you're probably thinking this year is hopefully he might improve, right? But chances are, this is who he is. He came out, he finally healthy, put all the pieces together. Maybe it's getting a couple years, under the same team. But I really like McKinney too, and hopefully he doesn't burn us here, number 2 overall. So he's got a lot of shoes to fill here. And coming in at the next, we have at number 3, we have another 24-year-old, and that is Kamren Curl. Kamren Curl, 7th rounder, kind of been a short tackler. We got accustomed to him like getting a lot of sacks. I wouldn't say a lot. He has 5 over his 4 years played, but yeah, he was somebody who was playing more of the box like early on. You kind of were hoping like maybe he would get more sacks, but he kind of regressed. But to me, that's okay too. He only had 1 tackle less than McKinney this year. He had 115. McKinney had 116. Still, if you're a safety, you're a defensive back, you're putting up over 100 tackles. I think there was 17 defensive backs in the NFL to go over 100 tackles. And to me, that's pretty elite company. If you're in a league where you start 2 defensive backs, you have 12 teams, that's 24 defensive backs, right? So he's upper echelon of that. Kamren Curl, a lot of people were maybe down on him. He kind of was spotty this year. Was a lot of people had high hopes, myself included. I thought maybe it looked like he was trending up and up and up. And then kind of this year he was a little bit inconsistent at times, but still overall the numbers were there. If anytime you get over 100 tackles, I'm not arguing, from the safety position. He does have 5 career sacks. He got a couple tackles for loss this year, 3 tackles for loss. He is good in that sense. Over his career, he's had 15 tackles for loss. So that's almost 4 a year. You'll live with that. And he does get at the quarterback a little bit. He's had 3 quarterback hits this year. If you're in a league that, not everyone plays with quarterback hits as a stat, but, somebody that gives you a little bit extra juice there. Cam Curl, do you think that, we've seen the peak of the crop, peak of the mountain with him, or, is he somebody who you think deserves to be number 3 here? Do you agree with that?
Based off of what we got going on here, and what's coming out in this free agency class, I would still stick with the 3rd spot. My only concerns with Curl is that he is very limited in his game. He is a in the box type safety. He has yet to get an interception. Like in the last 3 years, like he's struggling when it comes to pass defense, right? But like anything else, tackling is key, especially in fantasy. So if he's able to get those consistent 100 type of tackle seasons, that would be big for him. And it still gives him that value, which is why he should still be at 3. He can make the play at the quarterback. He can make the play on the running back, tackle for loss, which is huge. The only thing that I thought about this year, with the Commanders, with a whole new offensive, head coach coming in, Dan Quinn, we'll see how this type of play goes. I think he stays with Washington. I think of I wouldn't say as dynamic, but I think of that Cam Chancellor role or that Donovan Wilson role that he did for the Dallas Cowboys. Like that's the kind of player I think he could play in, where he's kind of that hybrid linebacker, strong safety. You got to understand like how Dan Quinn runs his defense. And I think that would actually benefit him and maybe get some more creative plays, maybe a couple more turnovers, which will only benefit his type of fantasy value. He's still young. He's 24, again, strong value there when it comes to dynasty. So there's a lot of potential if he does re-sign with the Commanders. My only concern was just he's not making enough of those big plays to help on the back end. But if you can get him in that Cam Chancellor's Donovan Wilson role, I think he'd actually shine and grow compared to where he was this past season.
That's a good point, man, with the coaching there. Yeah, I like that point you made. That's important. I mean, if Dan Quinn, he's worked his magic with these other safeties, man, I'd like to see what a little magic does for Cam Curl. I mean, we're talking about a guy who had 5 top 20 finishes and 2 top 10 finishes at the defensive back position this year. So, there's definitely still glimmers of hope, that he can stay the route. His stocks, only increases, doesn't go down at all. Yeah, I think that's a good first step is having the coach there that can help him, that's made successful transformations for other players. Hopefully they don't invest in this position at the draft. I know they have like Percy Butler, Jeremy Reeves. I don't know if he might be even a free agent himself. So, I mean, what I'm getting at is they don't have guys that the next man up there, I don't think. So, yeah, he's definitely earned it. He's a 7th round pick, and people may have been down on him for that. He's definitely earned a contract, whether it's here or elsewhere. I hope he doesn't get too money hungry, because it's a good situation. He's familiar here, and I would like to continue to see him excel as a Commander. And I think, the coaching might bring the best out of him. So, number 3, good defensive back there, great value, solid tackler. These top 3 guys have been pretty sturdy so far. Now, how about the next guy? And this is, I'm glad I'm gonna ask you, because we play in different scoring here. You said your tackles were 1 for solo and half for assist, where my leagues are 2 for a solo, 1 point for assist. To me, this guy kind of rubbed me the wrong way, especially over this last year. Maybe he didn't for you, but Kyle Dugger, I know he's a great player. He's definitely a hard player. He plays, to the whistle. Good in run support, not a huge liability in passing. And Kyle Dugger, I mean, I like him. He's had double-digit tackle performances, but at the same time, I just feel like he's very inconsistent. He's had a high ceiling but a low floor, and I think he got exposed a little bit fantasy-wise this year. What do you think in your leagues that you played? Did he rub you the wrong way?
Yes and no. Yeah, he definitely had some inconsistencies. He definitely had some value when it came to the tackling. Now, one of the IDP leagues I'm in that I've been doing for about 12 years, we actually give you 2 points for pass deflections. And that's something he did do a fairly good job. He had 7 this past season, which helped him get to some double-digit performances in this season. So he had some value. It just wasn't consistent enough. Like where there was a game he could have maybe 2 tackles, and then a pass deflection, he'll give you, 4 points. And you're like, well, that was nothing. So it just wasn't consistent enough. And I don't know what it was. I think because normally a Bill Belichick type of defense, a guy like Kyle Dugger normally would shine. Not sure what quite happened. I think a lot of it is obviously a, a worn down defense. Offensively, they struggled. That defense was on the field a lot, and maybe that was part of it. Maybe Belichick just isn't the same, type of coach. He's getting out coached by some of these younger guys that are coming into the league. Maybe that's part of that factor. He just wasn't consistent enough. I do expect him to have some some suitors out there. I think there are some teams that are gonna want to grab him. It's tough when it comes to New England players. Like some of these guys get a starting role for New England and they don't get a starting role somewhere else. Like Belichick does that. He gets players that you just never would have thought would have been a starter and they shine and somewhere else they don't. So I do worry a little bit of where he might end up going. But again, for me, there were some games he was stood out. He would have been a great bye week filler. That's kind of how I would have used him in this past season because
Yeah.
he wasn't consistent enough.
And let me just say too, I'll preface with this. I mean, he really, well, I had him as a rookie. Had a
Mhm.
good year. 2 years ago, 2021, he had 92 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 picks. My bread and butter is looking at the tackles. This year, 2023, he had the most tackles he's ever had, 109,
Yep.
right? A sack and a half, 6 tackles for loss. So don't get me wrong. There was games. You're right. He had a 15 tackle game this year. He had a couple double digit tackles. So it's like when he hits, man, it's big time, and you don't want to miss those. But it's at the same time, it's almost like if you had like a Cameron Bynum, or obviously like a Jesse Bates, even a Josh Metella, seemed like those guys were like a more consistent 10 to 12s, right? Than more of a
Yeah.
hit or miss. At the end of the year, Kyle Dugger, had, what did we say, over 100 tackles, 100
Yeah.
and was it 109? But yeah, I mean, he ended up outproducing, basically majority of the safeties and tackles, 109 tackles this year. I mean, you can't argue it was his best year.
Yeah.
So, hopefully, definitely he stays because this is definitely a good situation for him. And I don't think like the change of the guard to Mayo from Belichick really like changes everything. And I don't think they're
No.
going to go in 180. That was his coach too, Mayo's coach. So I'd like to
Yep.
see things stay the same in New England and players stay the same. I don't think that Kyle Dugger goes anywhere else and gets better than what he is right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think he is in a better spot there. He's also 27. Again, you start playing an age factor in some of these players. He's comfortable. He is again, you have Mayo as your head coach now, like that consistency helps. It's a lot of players don't want to just leave their offensive coordinators, their defensive coordinators. Like they like that consistency. They like that rhythm. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
easy for them. That's when you change any of this stuff up, like I'll just bring up quarterbacks. Some of these quarterbacks have dealt with a different coordinator every year.
Mm-hmm.
Some just can't, adapt to that. Like, why put a player in a position where they can't adapt to a new play, coordinator? And I think for him, it would be a perfect spot for him to just stay there. And I do think he can perform, but it just needs to be a little bit more consistent.
Right. Yeah, definitely a player who maybe has more value in New England than
Yeah.
elsewhere. Right. Very good. Okay, so we got Winfield, McKinney, Curl, and Dugger. Those were 4 safeties. Now we're going to roll into a cornerback. We know there's leagues out there that target cornerbacks. You may only have to start one. Some crazy leagues, you're starting more than one. You're starting 2 or 3, right? So we want to shed some light. Generally, like when we talk about scoring, The defensive backs that you're rostering, that you're upper echelons, most of them are safeties, but there are some times where cornerbacks, they whether it's a few weeks here and there or by the end of the year, they're top dogs. The one we're going to go in tier one, the first one, actually the only one in tier one, is probably somebody that I can't imagine this guy being off anyone's top, we'll say 3. I'll play it safe. Top 3 defensive back for Dynasty. 27 years old, but L'Jarius Sneed, man, he's been great so far. Maybe this year for me, I kind of looked at his numbers. Tackles were down. He only had 78. This is somebody who in his first 3 years had 6.5 tackles. He didn't get one this year. So maybe, I'm sitting here thinking it was a down year for L'Jarius Sneed, and not to discredit the player he is, because maybe he's getting better for the team, right? Like he's maybe more man-to-man and really shutting down elite players. That's what he's done this year. You look it up, he's shut down a lot of great receivers, and that's perhaps more valuable to the team. But when we're talking fantasy, the numbers kind of dipped this year for L'Jarius Sneed. Maybe take this year with a grain of salt, but the fact that he wasn't rushing the quarterback as much this year, he only had 3 quarterback hits. Over his first 3 years, he had 13. So maybe the Trent McDuffie effect kind of put him on an island. Hey, you're our best corner. We're going to have you guard the best wide receiver. So maybe that's something to watch out for. But at this point, how volatile cornerbacks can be. And at only 27 years old, I think L'Jarius Sneed not only deserves to be the first cornerback on this list, but also upper echelons of Dynasty IDP. What do you think?
I love Sneed. Again, based off scoring, like in my league that he gets, you get 2 points of pass deflection. He had 14. That's 28 points in fantasy for the season. He had 11 the year before that. Like he is phenomenal. And I know obviously the tackles were down compared to the previous year. And like you mentioned, they're not using him in the same type of scheme. And I think that's just, but let's just say what it is. That defense was phenomenal. They didn't need him to be that extra guy in the box sometimes, or the extra guy trying to rush after the quarterback. Like they didn't need to use him that way. And McDuffie is a great corner as well in itself. Like he's played fantastic. So that has changed a little bit for Sneed, but again, hands down, he was one of my favorite players. I had him in one of my redrafts this season just because the ability to again, pass breakups. He got a lot of double-digit performances because of that for me. And again, your scoring may play a factor in this for that reason, but he was fantastic for most of this season based off of that type of scoring, because even though he may not get interceptions or tackles, if he's able to break up passes, and you're in that type of scoring, he's phenomenal. And I do expect him to stay with Kansas City. Like I don't see him going anywhere else.
I think so too.
He wants to stay there. I think most of that team wants to stay together.
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the point of like different scoring. Here we are on my side. We're talking tackles heavy. That, hey, for those listeners, don't just say, hey, that was number one on their list. Listen to what we're saying, right? Because we're talking 2 different scoring here. Mine's more of a tackle heavy. Steve's is more of a like balanced, or, you get those extra points for splash plays and passes defense, So really fine tune our rankings with what your scoring is, because we're giving it to you from both angles here. And that's really nice. I'm glad that we have that to gel and bounce off each other. And that's no disrespect taken at all. Let me just throw that out there. We have different scoring. We're going to think differently. And guess what? IDP has a bunch of different scoring now. There's 1, 2, 3, a bunch of different scoring systems. So yeah, I'm glad we brought up that point. L'Jarius Sneed, yeah, he's not. I'm not knocking him down off my top, 2 or 3. I'd probably have him 1 or 2. But yeah, definitely somebody whose roles kind of changed. So if you are in a tackles heavy league, take note of that, because it does seem like things have changed, and I don't know if it's going to be changing back to the way it was with McDuffie being so great there too. Yeah. Very good. In our last, we are going to talk about a defensive back, our last guy from tier 1. I'm going to recap who our first 5 were. Number 1 was Antoine Winfield Jr. Number 2, Xavier McKinney. 3, Kamren Curl. 4, Kyle Dugger. 5, cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. And 6, defensive back safety from Indianapolis, Julian Blackmon, who is somebody who, if you're going off the career stats, he's probably flying under the radar. But Julian Blackmon, wasn't really a starter for Indianapolis his first couple years. Played infrequently. He wasn't, he was kind of a role player there. But this year, because of basically how bad they're hurting at the safety position, he was asked to step up into that position, and he really excelled. He missed I want to say, last 2 games, but still ended up with 88 tackles, which is great. He in his 15 games, he had 88 tackles. So, I mean, let's say he averages 6 a game. Those last 2 games, 88 plus 12, give him 100, right? So I think he would have been a guy to hit 100 tackles at the safety position. And this is only his first year getting started there. He's still young. He's 25 years old. He has missed 17 out of 67 games. But, to me, I'm really more so throwing what in the past has away and really looking at this year when he played all 15, started the 15 games he was active. He doesn't really do it as far as sacks. He's not going to be that guy to like make a lot of tackles in the backfield. Although he did have 5 this year. So the thing is, take it with a grain of salt. The first couple years for him, he wasn't that player, but now he got a chance to get a starting job, and he really kind of did take off. He's not only somebody who's going to get it done in tackles, but he had 5 tackles for loss this year. He also had 2 quarterback hits. He's not somebody who's going to get a bunch of sacks, but at the same time, Julian Blackmon kind of came into his own, and I think that they really don't have much depth in Indianapolis, and I think they can get him back for a next contract. And I hopefully, quite frankly, I think that's where he'll excel. I don't know if he goes anywhere else and is a shoe-in, top tier 1 defensive back. But man, for like where you got him at ADP, to where we're talking about him now, he's really come a long way. Steve, do you think that this can continue for him, especially if he gets re-signed?
Yes. So again, performed really well. He had 4 interceptions, 8 pass deflections as well. Again, especially if you're in those type of scoring. So he had some really good games. Like you mentioned, he missed a couple games where he probably could have hit that 100 tackle season, which is phenomenal for his safety. Again, tackles are still the king when it comes to most IDP leagues. So he's able to do that. I do think he ends up with the Colts. Colts have a lot of money. They have $58 million in their cap space. So they're going to re-sign a lot of these players that performed really well, and obviously a couple more to help out. So that's definitely a player that I'm putting back in there. I know the injury thing where he missed some time is always a concern with any type of player, but you sometimes can't foresee those things. I don't believe most things when it comes to injuries, it's not always like a bug. It's not something that just you catch it and you're always going to get hurt. So I'm not going to, overthink that. Blackmon probably is available in your dynasty right now. If you're an IDP, he's probably sitting somewhere in a free agency spot you probably could pick up right now while you're listening to this. So again, he's definitely a player I think can get back to that 100 tackle season. He's a player that does make some splash plays and only get better being the starter for a second year. I do expect him back to Indy. I don't think he's going to go anywhere else.
Yeah, for sure. I think he will too. I mean, they really can't afford to lose him. And at the same time, he's somebody who he might have earned himself a contract elsewhere, but yeah, they don't have the depth, and they need him quite frankly at the safety position. And they had to patchwork of what they could, after he left, and it wasn't pretty. I mean, they tried guys like Nick Cross and I forget Rodney Thomas, and man, those guys were kind of whiffs, especially in IDP. But yeah, Julian Blackmon, I mean, he wasn't that guy. Like a lot of people, I remember listening to podcasts beginning of the year, a lot of people had doubt, even though when they learned he was going to be the guy. But yeah, I was one of them. But I quickly learned that Julian Blackmon, he proved me wrong. He could definitely have some value. And at only 25 years old, I mean, we're talking about a guy who this year, in his first year to shine, he had 5 top 20 DB finishes, 5 weeks with top 20. I'm sorry. Yeah. 5 top finishes of the top 20. And then he actually had 1 week where he was the overall number 1 D-back in scoring. So yeah, definitely a guy who, I mean, he had, I think, 2 double-digit tackles this year, kind of coming to his own. And I'm excited to see him hopefully get re-signed with many others there in Indy. They have big free agents out there, right? Big decisions to make. But yeah, hopefully he comes back and continues to build on the success he's had this year.
Yeah,
Definitely.
unless Indy puts their money out and goes after McKinney, I think Blackmon stays.
That's a good landing spot for McKinney too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been
Colts have the money, man. They're gonna spend it.
And Indy, man, if they could find some big play hitters back there. I mean, I like what they have in Blackmon. If they can get somebody to complement him. At the same time, if you're having Blackmon, you might say like, hey, throw me a fringe player because, you know, he's eating up the tackles back there. You don't want some big name there to come and steal the spotlight. But we've seen backfields that they can shine with two people, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think definitely should get resigned there, and I'm excited in redraft and in dynasty. I mean, like we said, young guy definitely should be, you know, maybe if he's getting slept on right now and you're in a shallow league, you don't have to jump right now, but, you know, don't let him be free agents when the season rolls around next year and he's resigned.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was very nice to have you. I'm so happy with what you brought to the table. You're an incredibly knowledgeable guy. And I tell you what, you say you don't do much defense. That you could have fooled me. That doesn't sound right. It sounds like you know your stuff. And you were a former coach, you said, right?
Yeah, I mean, I did coaching, did some just high school stuff, and then now I just coach my son's flag. So, you know, it counts.
I can see it in you, man. Now you're coaching
8-year-olds running around, you know, it's awesome.
It sounds like you need to get them a trophy smack belt, you know, when they win the league, get them a little trophy smack.
Yeah, we won 2 championships in the last 3 years so far. So it's been fantastic. It's funny. I love trophy smack. We actually have, unfortunately, I finished second in my home league this past season, but we actually have a traveling trophy. So whoever wins gets to keep the trophy for the year, and we get a plaque. So we kind of move it around. So it's gonna be back there this upcoming season for sure.
Next to the ring, right? The free ring.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, listening, and viewing. Keep it posted for our next tier. We're going to break down tier 2 defensive backs. I'll give you a little spoiler. We got a couple of cornerbacks in there for those of you who, you know, really want to highlight the corners. But thank you so much for listening, and you guys have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you, and bless up.
Thank you for watching this IDP Guys video. If you like this content and you want more fantasy football content, click here. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos to help you master your IDP league, click here to subscribe.